Okay, so welcome we're in our second week, and this is the topic of mindfulness and sounds that heal. But before we go there, we're going to talk about International Peace Day. So today's International Peace Day. We'll talk a little bit about International Peace Day and what's going on and the celebrations and the history of it and everything. And then we'll return back to the candle gazing and the homework, and we'll practice that. We'll actually do one practice of the candle gazing. And then we're going to talk about the 4 parts of the mind, the habits of the conscious mind, the 5 senses, and how really when we're teaching mindfulness, and this is different than what other trainings are doing with mindfulness. Really, when we look at mindfulness going into classes, we really have to think about how to engage the senses. So we're going to address that as well. We'll take a break, and then we're going to do the activities that are in the manual. We're going to review them. And they're the singing bowls. So I have my singing bowls back here, and the soothing music. I have a favorite that I use from YouTube that I really like, and it's free. And there's a lot of quiet, soothing music on YouTube, and you kind of will just make up your own, like which one is the best one that you feel comfortable working with. And then we'll wrap it up here. So just to begin with, how was your week? I hope your week went well, and I hope that it was just abundant and delightful and happy. Did you all have a good week? Is it starting to feel like fall at all where you are? Is it still?
You know, I didn't get introductions in the beginning other than my own, so I don't know where everybody lives, but it's feeling like fall here.
Oh, good.
It's 75 today, which is nice, but it's been in the 60s.
Good. Well, great. So, Paula, do you want to, this is Crystal, and Crystal, this is Paula. You see Paula. Paula, can you just do a little bit of an introduction?
Yes, so I work as a preschool teacher with kids 4 and 5 years old, and this year I started implementing yoga poses. And the more I read about mindfulness and meditation and bringing peace, I find it very interesting. And hopefully one day in the future, I'll be able to bring all these techniques to different schools.
Yeah.
Great. And you live in Sedona?
Yuma,
Where?
Arizona.
Yuma, Arizona.
It's hot still.
Is it? I'm in Washington, so lots of trees and very different.
That's nice.
Yeah, in Sedona, we have sun outside, but this morning it actually did feel like a little bit of fall was creeping in there. So that we were really happy about that. Like finally, it's not an extended summer. It's finally fall like here. So okay, so let's jump into International Peace Day. I want to just start off with are you doing anything in International Peace Day? Is there anything in your city or your town or your community that's doing anything in recognition for International Peace Day where you are?
No.
Not that I know of.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I saw some footage yesterday on some of the kids around, yesterday was that big climate change protest the teenagers were having. So, we got where there was some footage here on what the teenagers were doing and the high schoolers were doing, and some of them did protest. But also the school that I worked at, they do like a parade, a peace parade, and there was some footage of that too that they did around town here. But also there's this, what we're doing here in Sedona is called the Peace Trail. So at one time we had Tibetan monks that were living close to the Sedona Library on Dry Creek, and some of them are still here. Anyway, one of them, who's an artist as well, organized the Peace Trail events, and all these Peace Trail events, each event has a focus on peace. And so all this week and the week before, and it's going to go on for another week, it's kind of like this whole big month of peace celebrations are happening here in Sedona. But we've been known for being like an internationally peace city, and kind of having that type of reputation here. So I'll be speaking at a peace event in about a week here, just talking about the work that I do and the work that I've done in schools and stuff. So yeah, there's some recognition of it here. And some of this I saw also in some of the schools. I think the schools are recognizing it more and more, but still, like my son's school didn't do anything for International Peace Day. There's schools here that it's like a mixed bag. Some schools are really recognizing it and getting the kids involved. Some schools aren't. It is a Montessori principle to bring peace into the curriculum and to integrate it into everything that all the curriculum that they do. And a lot of Montessori schools do celebrate International Peace Day, but we don't see it as popular as in the public schools. So I wanted to give you, it's a fascinating start for International Peace Day. I wanted to give you a little bit of the history of International Peace Day, because it was one of those love projects, and I mean just like full heart projects of a man, a documentary maker out of the UK, who really was on the forefront of getting this established. And it was a labor of love for sure. So I'm gonna share, and this what I'm showing you here, this is on YouTube. He has this full documentary about it's 1 day of peace. It's on YouTube and it's free. And I actually showed it to my students at one time. So we're going to switch here. And go to, give me a second. Okay.
My strategy was to show them a video I'd made, full of endorsements for the day. And if we could press play, I had no idea the effect it would have.
To have a day of cessation of violence, of ceasefire, of rejection of deadly conflict, that to me is an idea whose time has come.
Peace is actually out of the continuation of our existence. If you want, under 65, let's start with the first. The representative of Palestine wishes to take the floor, please.
وأن نرى صورة السيد بيريز الذي يشارك في قتل الأطفال يوميا في فلسطين، هذا انحياز من هذا الفيلم إلى العدو الإسرائيلي. لم نرى إشارة واحدة على طفل فلسطيني قتل على حاجز أو دمرت مدرسة فلسطينية. لم نرى عدلا في هذا الفيلم يا معالي الأمين العام. ونحن لا نريد أحد يأتينا من الخارج ليضع لنا برنامج عمل كيف نعمل من أجل السلام. لذلك للسيد المبجل، ونحن نرحب به هنا وفق الضيافة العربية، نقول له برجاء تغيير هذا الفيلم حتى يكون متوازن مع قرارات ومبادئ الأمم المتحدة التي نلتف حولها وتدعونا أنت لنلتف حولها.
So I add my voice to what my colleague from Palestine had mentioned. I think the film is unjust. I think the Israeli government should be fully aware that there is at least 1 day, not around the clock, killing people. So I think you are preaching to the converted, and you should go and preach to them.
Can I? Thank you for sharing your thoughts, and I agree with many of the thoughts that you have. I visited Gaza, I visited the West Bank. I saw Shimon Peres because I asked all Nobel laureates for a statement about peace. Peace 1 day is not saying who is right and who is wrong. In our hearts, we know if someone dies, it is wrong. The Arab League has an incredible opportunity to demonstrate to the world its commitment to peace by calling for ceasefire and non-violence on the first ever UN ceasefire day. I honestly come here for you to make history. I ask you to lead the world, and I will document that journey. I thank you so much for this opportunity. I got it badly wrong. Let me explain how my journey began and why my film camera was capturing such a public disaster.
It's a professional show. There's a lot of money invested in it, so you're going to have to be a real professional actor. What do you think is important for a professional?
To keep calm, not to get nervous. Remember his lines, of course, and just act as well as he can, I think.
It's a big role as well. There's a lot to learn. What worries you most about it?
Lines and forgetting things. But I don't think I will. I'm going to really try hard at it.
You, 2, 3, 4, ya, ba, 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 kick, place. 5, 6, 7, 8.
I played some silly roles, but it made me realise the impact film could have. So I started making my own low-budget films. All around me were scenes of aggression and war and hate. I couldn't understand why we just can't get along. The more violence I saw, the more frustrated I felt about not being able to do anything about it. But I wanted to try. In July 1998, I decided to make a film about peace. Then I realised there was no day of peace. That was it. I was going to try to establish the first ever peace day. A day of ceasefire and non-violence. A day for everyone to become involved in the peace process. I'm dyslexic. My only qualification is a D in pottery. But that wasn't going to stop me. You see, if I failed, the film could make a profound statement about a world unwilling to change. If I succeeded, well, that was almost inconceivable.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. Like I said, this is on YouTube. It's a free documentary that he made, and it really goes through his journey of how he got, first, he had this vision of having a documentary about peace. And then second, he had this vision about, well, it's not enough. It's, what am I doing here? I'm a filmmaker, I'm gonna document all this stuff, but I really wanna make more of an impact on the world. And so he made it his crusade to have one day of ceasefire. And so this film kind of goes through that history, but it also goes through the ups and downs of that journey of getting a ceasefire. And it's quite telling. I highly recommend it. I'll go ahead and send you the link this week sometime for it if you'd like to view it. It's really intense in that one scene when he's at the table with all of the international leaders and the things that are coming out with the Palestinians and everything. That one scene is kind of just one little start of the roadblocks. He has huge roadblocks that he has to overcome. And then, but then he finally does have it. He finally does get his International Peace Day at the end of it. To let you know, also, I'm doing the peace talk that I'm doing in about a week is with my friend and my yoga teacher at one time, and she's a sweet leader in the yoga world here in Sedona. It's Shraddha Sagar, it's Ruth Hartung, and she actually has yoga programs, teacher programs in the Middle East. And it's been her, she's gonna do, when we do this talk, she's gonna talk about her journey about getting yoga there, and a lot of what she's done there. And this was really telling to me, a lot of what she's done there. So she's gone there and she's taught yoga to refugees, and she's taught yoga to like the trainees there. But she says a big population of the people that are in these refugee camps are children. So these children that are misplaced and going through these really traumatic and horrific circumstances. So it's a real, we look at this problem of nonviolence from our perspective, and we see the American perspective of it in our daily lives. But there's also this really big global picture of what's happening, and the scale of nonviolence and the trauma that's happening, it's to another level altogether. So for this man to get this one day of ceasefire to be passed for, for this just one event, then it was quite inspiring. So I highly recommend that documentary. I highly recommend, even if you're the one organizing the event, to do it in your community. I think it's important and profound to bring attention to the event, so you can, it's tapping into the international perspective of the world. It's kind of linking, it's a global event. It's linking us together and making it better known in our community. So I just wanted to start off with that. I mentioned it in all my yoga classes today. I mentioned it in my yoga classes yesterday too. And I get the same, I always get the same reaction, like, wow, I didn't know it was International Peace Day. So I think the more attention we can put on it, the better. And just any kind of attention we can put on peace, I feel like it's really important. And also it launches, when you're doing this type of program, whether you're doing an after-school program or you're doing a school program in the school as a teacher or at a studio, like Peace Day is kind of like the bookend. Peace Day is the first day, and it launches what you're doing, and it goes all the way up into the Earth Day. So in between there, and if you're doing something in the summer, you can still mention Peace Day. You can still talk about Earth Day, because they're big concepts that kids really understand, and you're bringing the importance to it. So I just wanted to start there with International Peace Day. And I want to go to the candle gazing. So I want to hear from you about the candle gazing. And just to review about the candle gazing, I have the candle in back of me too. It's blinkless gazing, and it's staring or looking or concentrating on one point in the flame for a time period. And what I found, especially if you have bigger groups of children that you're teaching mindfulness to, what I found is that the candle gazing is one of the most effective management tools. Like, it's one of the most effective ways of getting the attention of the group and of keeping the attention of the group. Why? Because children love the fire, the flame. They love to be the one who goes up there and, blows it out, or if you have the older kids, they can actually light it if you have the older kids. So it's a great management tool, and it's always, I think that there's a sense of wonder. It's like very similar to having like a campfire. When people are around a campfire, there's this certain effect that happens. There's this certain connection that happens with the flame. So I just wanted, before we practice it together, because I do want to practice it just to keep it fresh and keep it like reviewed in the mind, I just want to hear your experiences with it and how the candle gazing, whether you did it once every day or you did it, once every other day, whatever type of practice that you had with the candle gazing, and just what insights, what came from your practice of doing it? Was it awkward because you hadn't done it before, or was it kind of neat because maybe you're the type of person that can't like focus easily, and it really helped you to focus. So it's, I just really want you to make the personal connection, because when you make that personal connection to these practices, it's going to be easier for you to go out and to teach them to the children. So with all the practices that we're doing, all the activities that we're learning about, I just really want you to personalize it yourself. I don't want you to just, you know, kind of do it because it's in the book or because you're doing it in schedule. I want you to actually connect to the activity and feel like it's a good fit for your group, or kind of the timing of it, kind of just make it your own. Even with all of these activities, I just really want you to kind of have a connection to it on a personal level. So does anybody want to jump in and let me know how the candle gazing? Huh?
I'm happy to share.
Okay, great.
And sorry that I'm always on my phone because I don't want my dogs to bark if they hear you. Or you guys to hear my husband playing music. So I think that's why there's probably both my phone and me up on the screen. But anyways, I have done this practice several times, honestly, over the last probably 8 years. So it was easy for me to do it. And being a yoga and meditation teacher, you know, I already know the benefits and I already know what's possible. But for my personal experience this time, you know, just paying attention to what it does for me, it just helps me kind of have a sense of being centered, you know. And when you're really focused on the flame or concentrating, then I don't feel it's as though, as long as I'm concentrating, then there's no space for other thoughts to come in. So there's no room for the chaos or the, you know, whatever busyness may be in my mind during that day. So I, what else did I experience? You know, for me, there's a great deal of stillness that comes anytime I sit, and then with the concentration on the flame, that's just enhanced.
Very nice. Nice. And you said you, for 8 years, so did you learn this before? Were you at Summit Centers when you learned this? So where did you learn this practice?
Just from other teachers before I started teaching. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting, you know, the way that the kids react to it. They don't know that they're concentrating, but I've had teachers come up to me and say, wow, they're really concentrating, and, you know, the flame is a really good tool for them, you know. And that's the thing with concentration. If you're so deeply into it and then you break it, you only really know that you were concentrating because you stepped away from it. So you can see the difference, you know, in it. You can see that you're concentrating and the flame is helping you keep that focus. But as you walk away from it, you can say, oh, okay, I see how deep that concentration really was now because I walked away from it. I can see the other side of it. So great. So Paula, did you have any experiences with the candle gazing?
I have never done it before. So it was something new. And it felt relaxed. Like I just turned everything off, and the TV, everything. The first day, I had tea, and the next day I stopped drinking the tea because I was just like not focusing on the candle because I was getting the tea, and then, you know, so no, it was not a good idea.
Well, can I add something to that? The tea that you're having, was it caffeinated? Was it a black tea?
No, it was decaf, but I was, because the next day I just drank it. One day I drank it first, and then the following day I drank it afterwards. And but when I was with the candle, one of the days I just tried like looking at the flame, and then just like, I don't know, I was just trying to picture it inside me. I don't know, I was just looking at that, like it was just relaxation moment for me, because all day I'm just busy, and then at night is when I shut everything off. And I want to implement it probably within the next 2 weeks at school.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Great.
'cause I'm gonna be doing the camping team, and I wanna just put the candle in with my little ones. I don't have a big class, so I wanna try it out just to see how it works with them.
That's great. You know, that's a lot of these activities. I've tested all of the activities that are in this book, but that's what I did. Like I would, because I wasn't satisfied with the mindfulness activities that were out there. Excuse me. Excuse me. So I thought to myself, because I didn't feel like they engaged the senses enough. And I was working in a unique situation where I was doing mindfulness for kids for 60, a group of 60 at a time and 30 at a time. So I was thinking to myself, you know, a lot of these mindfulness activities are good for one-on-one, but when you have a big group, how can you engage them? And so we'll talk more about the senses, but that's exactly what you're talking about is what I did. I tried these things out. I tried the candles. I've been practicing Tradika for a really long time, or candle gazing for a really long time. And so one day I was just like, well, maybe this will work with a bigger group, and if I can make it work, that would be great. And so it's this trial and error part of it. And just to let you know, all of these activities that I have in here, that's how I tried it out. I honed it and I refined it to fit with the group that I have. So great. I'm happy to hear that, Paulo, you're going to try it out and see how your group responds to it, because honestly, each group is different in the way that they receive it. You know, some kids are really, really drawn to the candles, although I really do feel like the candle gazing is this universal thing. I think it will work in any classroom, actually, and it's just the nature of fire. It's just the nature of like really being drawn into the flame. So great. Okay, so let's just practice it. We're going to get Shradika's hand up here. I'm bringing it in front here. And we're going to practice it together. And so in this practice, there's this great reverence. I didn't talk so much about this last time because I think we were rushed for time in the last like half an hour of it, but there's this great reverence for fire. And I think that having that perspective on fire is better than saying, no, don't touch the fire, get your hands out of it. Because my child and most children love to play somewhat with fire. Like they like to look at it, or they like not necessarily burn things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's something really attractive that children just really love and are drawn to fire. So the way we can make an introduction in teaching this is really saying, you know what, we honor fire. Like fire, we revere fire. Fire heats the world in a way. You know, the sun heats the world. The light, it gives us light. So any way you can introduce fire that way or light that way, just giving the honor to the flame, I think that children will understand it more deeply. So I have my timer in front of me, but we're going to go ahead and rub the hands together, close the eyes, just generate that spark in the palms of the hands, and inhale and exhale. And then place the hands on the eyes. Relax the optical nerves and just allow for yourself to be in this space of quiet. 2 more deep breaths. And then go ahead and release the hands and then take a look at the flame. And I know that it's different because we're on a video and the flame is not right in front of you, but let's just pretend like it is right in front of you. And I have the timer on, and we're going to look at the flame for 2 minutes. Let's go for 2 minutes. Okay, the last 30 seconds. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale, close the eyes, rub the hands together. Then place the hands on the eyes. And go ahead and release the eyes. And you see as the eyes are closed, you can still see that flame in that blank space, and then you can open them up. So it's this purification. It's a purification practice. And all of that stuff, I don't really share that end of it with the children, but for you to know, and if you keep on practicing it, I think I have it, do I have it one more week maybe? Maybe I don't, but if you practice it on your own, and if you keep practicing it, this candle gazing on your own, you'll see that there's this purification of your mind. It's this type of where the thoughts don't come as easily. There's this, so when I talk about the mind, this is a great segue to the next topic because I'm going to talk about the 4 parts of the mind. When I talk about the mind, and in that specific case, when I'm talking about the ahamkara, I'm talking about the busy mind, and what I mean by purification, I mean by just this refinement. Look, people who've practiced meditation for a long time, and even the Dalai Lama has talked about this, and even the long-term meditators have talked about Thich Nhat Hanh and other people that have made a lifetime of meditation and practices in mindfulness. It's not that they don't get thoughts. It's not that like one day you wake up and you're like, oh, you're completely absolved of the thinking mind. You don't have it anymore. No, that's not how it happened. These people and these monks and these people that have really, really dedicated themselves to freeing themselves mentally, this mental freedom and enlightenment, they still have that chattering mind. They still have thoughts come up. They still have the emotions that come with that chattering mind, anger or doubt. They still have all that. The difference, though, is because they've used these practices and because they've really focused on these practices, is that they don't react the same way. They see the thoughts, but they don't allow the thoughts to they don't get swallowed up in the waves of those thoughts, or they don't get swallowed up in the emotions of those thoughts. So it's not like they're exempt from the ahamkara, they're exempt from the thinking mind, or the ego mind, I should say, the ego mind. So this naturally goes into the 4 parts of the mind. This is, and I'm on page 18 of the manual. So the 4 parts of the mind. I have to say, my earliest meditation and yoga teacher is Ramajyoti Vernon, and she is an expert on the 4 parts of the mind and the Yoga Sutras. And her teaching is really profound and very, very deep about and her daily practice of meditation and her lifetime practice. It's really interesting to see the evolution of where these practices take you. So this work in the 4 parts of the mind and the Yoga Sutras, although I'm talking it from this perspective, we're not the only ones who talk about, the chattering mind. I mean, or the busyness of the mind, or the busyness of the ego, or they're just have different words from in different places, but they all point to the same thing. They all point to this state of mental freedom. They all point to the state of happiness, and they call it in yoga the samadhi, you know? So when we're talking about the 4 parts of the mind, we're talking about the conscious mind, the ego mind, and the subconscious mind, and the overmind. So there's the 4 parts. And I'm going to actually bring this up for you on here. And this is really important to know. This is really important to think about and to this is like the foundation to just the background of what we're doing. So here we go. We have the 4 parts of the mind and the conscious mind. So the conscious mind is sensory perception. So we're going to talk about the senses because with children, when you're working with children, the senses, that's the bridge that you have to make. That's the bridge because, you know, adults can grasp abstract ideas. They can grasp the abstract in a really, really beautiful way. And that's the development of the mind for an adult. But for children need something concrete through the senses in order to understand something in order to understand what mindfulness really is. And so in the conscious mind, this is the seat of mindfulness. This is what we're really, when we're doing these activities with children on the very practical end, this is the part that we're really, really engaging. So you'll see these activities will engage, like candle gazing. Candle gazing is that sense of sight, right? We're engaging that, we're drawing them in through the flame. It's action-oriented. It's the external world. So, and like I said, it's the seat of mindfulness. So we're going to expand on the conscious mind. So that's what we function in every day. That's what we do with our mundane tasks. That's what we do in our careers and our jobs. That's what we are doing on a daily basis. This is what we have a lot of stability in the conscious mind, hopefully. You know, we know where we live, we have our, you know, we have our daily tasks, we know like where to go to the store. This is all in the awareness of the conscious mind, okay? And then we have the ego mind. And the ego mind is this place where there's this value that's put on what we perceive in our sensory perceptions. Now, there's the thing with the sensory perceptions is that our perceptions, and a lot of times, and we've all experienced this, where my perception of something, and we may be going through the exact same thing, may be completely different. It's just like when you have children, and I only have one child, but a lot of times, like my brothers and sisters, I have 2 older brothers and 1 twin sister, so there's 4 of us. But our perceptions of our childhood, even though we lived in the same household, even though we had the same parents, you know, we had all these similarities, but we walked out with 4 completely different perceptions of our childhood. So that tells me that the conscious mind may be able to receive the information and it may be able to have that sensory intake, but it's the ego mind that kind of places a different perspective on that input, right? So that's why 4 people can be in the same household, but they can see completely 4 different perspectives of the same occurrences and of the same history. So this is where we focus on comparisons. This is where we focus on differences. This is also the thoughts, emotions, and memories are comprised in the ego. And this is the place where a lot of confusion can happen as well. You know, so the ego mind is that place where the sensory perceptions are are placed some sort of value or judgment on. And we'll come back to this, okay? We'll come back to the ego mind. Subconscious mind. So this is the storehouse. It is just basically where we store all of our impressions. And we won't talk too much about that. And then the overmind. So this is the intuitive part of the mind. This is the place where your intellectual thinking processes is transformed into intuitive format. And I actually, there was a time period where I'm going to get out of this for a second, where I was really thinking about how can I teach the difference between the intuitive mind and the thinking mind. I've had people ask me, but if an intuition comes to you the same way as the thinking mind, how do you know something is intuitive? And actually, this conversation started with the children asking me this, as really wanting to know what is intuition and what are our thoughts? Aren't they the same thing? And my answer to that question is no, they're not. And part two of that is that the intuitive mind deals with, yes, it comes into the form of a word sometimes. It comes into the form of sometimes it can even come into the form as a sign or as something that comes like out from you, that someone gives to you, like that they're just being a mirror for you as like a piece of like an intuitive hit. But the thing is that there's always something physically that intuitively you feel it. Like you can even say you can feel it in your heart. And so the intuition, and another part of it is that intuition is not as loud, I guess, or it doesn't shout at you as much as thoughts do. So thoughts can be like a train, and thoughts, the train can keep on going and keep on going and keep on going. And that series of repetition, that series of like, I'm shouting at you, like, pay attention to me, that kind of energy, those are thoughts. And a lot of people who have really busy minds, they can say, and at one point we all do, but they say it's like they're relentless. Another adjective for like the thinking mind is like relentless. It is just relentless in its nature. Whereas the intuitive nature is you'll feel it physically in your heart center, but it'll come out as words as well, but it's also not as that shout louding, it's that softer voice within that you feel and that you listen to. So that's the two differences between the intuition and the ego mind. And that overmind, I don't talk too much about the overmind with children, but I think it's important for you to know about it, because when you're going through your journey of mindfulness or meditation, I think it's really important for you to be able to say, okay, no, that thought right there, that sounds more like my ego mind. Or, you know what, that I feel so connected to that thought, and it feels in a soul level, on a spiritual level, I really do feel like that's intuitive. And the nature of the two is quite different. I think that that's part of self-care and self-knowledge, being able to discern those two things. And the more that you practice that, I think the more you can share that with children. And you don't have to talk about it in these terms. Like, you don't have to talk about it completely in these 4 parts of the mind. I think this is quite advanced. I wouldn't teach something like this, and I haven't taught something like this to children, but I think you as a practitioner of teaching mindfulness to children, I think it's good for you to have it, and for you to just know the difference within yourself, and it's part of your own meditation and mindfulness journey. So the overmind is really more quiet. It's a more quiet of a place than the ego mind is. And there was something else I was going to share about the 4 parts of the mind. This comes all from the Yoga Sutras. And also there's, where we're going to expand more on is that conscious mind, because that's where we can really make we can really make a difference, because this is the seat where we can really, really engage in mindfulness. So that takes me to page 19, to the habits of the conscious mind. So we're leaving behind the ego mind, we're leaving behind the subconscious mind and the overmind. And again, I want to reiterate that the yogis are not the only ones who talk about this. There's a lot of talk about the ego mind in other traditions and other like psychological, like Carl Jung and other people talk about it. But it just resonates with me most, this teaching. And so the habits of the conscious mind, we talk about correct perception, incorrect perception, imagination, sleep, and memory. Okay, so here we go. There's these subcategories to the conscious mind. And the one that we're most interested in is correct perception. And like, again, that goes back to my example. And it could be in any household where if you have, let's say 2 children in a household, and they have the same parents, they lived in the same house, and they have a completely different perspective on their childhood. It can happen. Another example could be work time and work associates. Like at a school, you can have, if it's a small school, you can have maybe 6 or maybe 9 teachers at a school, if it's a small charter school, and each one of those 9 teachers can have that same supervisor, could have that same schedule, could have that same and their perception of the whole staff can be completely different. And even students, have you noticed this too? I'm gonna interject this. This happened a lot where a student, I have a perception of a student and a child, and it's completely different than a perception that the teacher that had them before. Or it's really interesting when teachers come up to me and say, oh, that child's going to give you such a hard time, or it's, we had such a hard time with that child. It's going to be such, and then they come up to me and I don't have a hard time with them. It's a whole different energetic altogether. That happened a lot with, so we had 2 girls come into our class last year, and they were both kicked out of the schools that they were at before. And I remember the introduction for both of them was, they're not going to last at our school, and there's all this drama and all of this stuff. We did not have one incident with either one of those girls. And I mean, it was like as if, because the environment that they were in changed so drastically, that we were able to give them a lot of one-on-one attention. We were able to, and they were doing these mindfulness practices. They were doing the peace curriculum as well. And we were able to really put the attention that they needed, give them the attention that they needed, that it was like, it was funny at the end of the school year, the teachers I taught in a co-op, there's a co-teaching circumstances, and we just looked at each other like, wow, we did not, it was just one of those incidences where the perception was so different wherever they came from before, and the impression that we got from what the outside school was telling us about these girls was so different than how they engaged with us, and how it actually, the whole school year actually transformed. So there's just a couple of examples of how perception is the habits of the conscious mind, and correct perception, what is the truth versus our incorrect or our imagination. And this is a lifelong exercise. And this is interesting, because when I teach this with children too, I tell them this is just not, adults have this problem with perception as well. It's like, when we're teaching about truth, being able to see something truthfully, being able to not be afraid of what that perception is, and to talk about truthfulness. So truthfulness is one of the themes of peace curriculum, and I think I have that in my book. I have at the very back of the book in the appendix, there's that calendar of the character habits like truth and like these peace topics and themes in the very, very back. And one of it is truth. And so for that whole time, we just talk about truth, and we talk about being truthful. And with kids, the easiest way to teach that is by telling the truth. And we start there by for them being able to tell the truth, and then we let that grow into like being able to act in a truthful way, being able to live in a truthful way. So, and then this just goes back to this correct perception, for us to be anchored in that correct perception. And how difficult is it to be in a place where there's a lot of this second point, this incorrect perception, where the perception is so skewed, or the ego mind is so involved. And the ego can play itself out in the imagination. It can also play itself in the incorrect perception, where it becomes so difficult to function in that type of culture or that type of environment. You know, if you've ever been in an environment where there's a lot of incorrect perception or there's a lot of imagination, you'll see that it's very hard to function, and it's very hard to just be in your own truth when there's a lot of that confusion. What it is really, it's confusion. And because eventually the correct perception always comes, what in my experience is that truth and correct perception always comes about. I have some sun. It's just, the sun is coming in. Correct perception is just a matter of time when the truth comes out eventually in everything. And I saw this over and over again in schools. When I was also the anti-bullying committee chairperson, and I used to investigate like different occurrences that would like happen, different incidences that happened in the school that I was working in. And I could interview kids over and over again about a certain thing, and then they would finally break, right? At the end, they finally say, okay, fine, this is really what's happened. This is really what's going on. And what I realized is that they do want to tell the truth. The truth will always come out. It just takes a lot of persistence in it. And they do honor it. I feel like even kids that at first are just, they don't want to acknowledge that they've done something wrong, or they eventually come around to it because they know that it just feels wrong. You know, there's this feeling inside of themselves that they just know that it's not healthy. So I'm not going to really talk about sleep or memory. I'm going to come back to this correct perception, incorrect perception, and imagination. Sleep and memory is pretty self-explanatory. And let me see here. Where are we? 1:35. Okay, so we're going to probably take a break in about 5 minutes. I'm going to talk about the mindfulness and the 5 senses. So that's on page 20 on the manual. And I'm going to shift here to share this with you. Okay. So the conscious mind controls the 5 senses. So when we're looking at building curriculum for mindfulness, we want to see, okay, we want to check off of these. Okay, so does it deal with sight? Does it deal with hearing? Does it deal with taste? Does it deal with touch? Or does it deal with smell? And kind of plan accordingly to that. So the 5 senses, so in some of the activities that we do, we'll see the activity number 2 that we're going to talk about later is the singing bowls. And I use the singing bowls. It's just highly accessible for me, and I'm in the place that I am where there's other people. If I didn't have singing bowls, I could borrow singing bowls. I mean, it's just kind of what we have here. But if you didn't have singing bowls, or if you didn't have any instrument, I feel any instrument that, like a harp or a piano, soothing piano music, and we'll talk about, that's one of the things that, one of the other activities. anything where music is such a therapy, and not only children playing music and creating music, but also children actually listening to music, you know, and being in the presence of instruments. You know, in the digital age, we can digitally upload music and we have access to all this music, but to take children to an actual performance with live orchestra, live professionals, it's a whole nother engagement, and it's a whole nother experience for children that just a lot of children these days are not having that opportunity. So singing bowls, Tibetan bowls, even like some sort of harp, piano, even any of the string instruments, sitars, anything like that, any kind of instrument, because what it is a vibration. When you have music that's digitalized, you're losing to some degree the vibration of the music. When you have music that's live, that you have right in front of you, then there's this vibrational nature of it that goes beyond the digital versions of it. And it's good for the brain. It's just really, it activates a part of the brain that a digital copy of it can't. So the ability C, we talked about Tradika in that, engaging in mindfulness, the ability to hear, the ability to touch. Now this one is a unique one, and what we're going to talk about is we have a lot of children these days are coming in with sensory issues, okay? And whether we say it's special ed or on the spectrum, whatever that is, sensory issues, that's something that's quite profound these days and needs a lot of attention. And the touch, the sense of touch is really, really therapeutic. Being able to create things for them to put their hands on. And in Montessori, so I'm going to switch out of this, in Montessori, the way the Montessoris teach is from touch to brain, and that's a Montessori principle. That in order for children to completely learn something, completely embody something, they must first have the concrete, and then it engages the brain in a really true way. So the problem is that and you know, public schools are catching on to this. They're saying they're doing a lot of hands-on. There's this hands-on movement that's been growing for years and years now. So they're doing a lot more hands-on, but still, what's the first thing that gets taken out is the hands-on in some of the public schools. So if we have kindergartners, first grade, and second graders that don't have that element, if they're missing that concrete practice, then it's going to be really, really hard for them to make it up. You know, at some point, they're going to need that concrete, which means the hands teaching the brain. They're going to need that before they actually go to the abstract, or they're not going to really know the abstract. It's like that whole concept with the children who learn phonics, but they don't understand what they're saying, and they don't understand what they're reading. There's no vocabulary comprehension, or there's no reading comprehension. It's like they skipped a step in there somewhere. You know, there wasn't true understanding. So the sense of touch, and some of the activities that we'll be talking about later is like rocks, like being able for kids, the simple thing as picking up rocks and playing with rocks, that's a really profound activity for them. They need to have their hands in the dirt. They need to have their hands in something sensory so they can experience that. Their brains are working in those times. So that's the sense of touch. That's part of the mindfulness, you know. Where else am I? Oh, sense of taste. Sense of smell. We'll talk about sense of smell in terms of aromatherapy. We'll talk about, and there's other stuff, and cooking is another aromatic thing that can be, cooking is really important, and having that sense be activated through food, but also aromatherapy, essential oils, and the sense of taste. So the sense of taste, we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Not as important as part of the mindfulness curriculum, but still a part of the mindfulness curriculum. So I'm gonna go ahead and pause here. We'll take about a 15-minute break, and I'll be back in about 15 minutes. So the second half, we're going to talk about a little bit more. We're going to finish up with the mindfulness and the 5 senses. And then we're going to go into the activities with the singing bowls and the quiet soothing music exercise. So by the end of the second lesson, you have 3 activities. So I really wanted these to be really practical things you can do, you can start doing in your everyday kids yoga classes or your classes, whatever you're teaching, just to kind of get a start on it, get your toes wet in the field of mindfulness for children. And then we'll go through and we'll talk about the homework, and then we'll wrap up. It's already that time. It's really amazing how the time just kind of goes by like that. Yeah. So any questions on the 5 senses? And you kind of just see the logic of how these lessons are created. Like, it's really, when I'm thinking about creating mindfulness lessons, you have 52 of them here, I'm thinking about how can I get to the conscious mind through the 5 senses. And so, so you'll see the activities with seeing, hearing, smelling, and touching. We don't really go to the ability to taste here, but we engage in other ways, and all of these is engaging the brain here. I wanted to go back for a second, because before we do these activities, all the instructions of the activities are on here, and they all pretty much start off with mindfulness circle, create a mindfulness circle. And we didn't actually go through and talk about creating a mindfulness circle. So I want to just back up for a second and go back to the mindfulness circles on page 14. We talked a little bit about it. We talked about creating a safe space, and we had this big conversation about creating a safe space and personal boundaries and everything. But what I really wanted to focus on, the second part of it, is that I wanted to focus on actual logistically making like this circle. So I say that it's a mindfulness circle. Like, I say that it can be a circle, but it can just be a classroom, and that's a circle. And it can be just seated at desks, and that can be a circle as well. So there are many different ways that this mindfulness circle can look like. It can look like an actual circle of people sitting, of children sitting in a circle cross-legged. But we know as teachers that that never ever just happens. You know, it just doesn't always stay that way. Or it could be children at desks and they're practicing mindfulness at a desk. And still, you can still do exercises like or like candle gazing and like the singing bowls with students at desks. You can, if that's your classroom management comfort level, then that's where you can do it at. Also, what else? Oh, it could be standing as well. It could be a standing circle. It could be anywhere where there's the boundaries are set, where you're getting engagement with the students, where you're actually bringing them together and you're saying to them, we're going to start mindfulness right now, and just kind of setting that space for them. That could be your mindfulness circle. So I just wanted to expand on what we talked about before and just talk a little bit more about that aspect of it, because I'm talking about these mindfulness circles, and it takes a long time to have that kind of management, to be able to manage children in a way where they're in a neat circle or oval or whatever it is. But what I wanted to just get across, that whatever that looks like for you, whether that's in a desk or whether that's on a yoga mat or whether that's outside standing, you are going to create the mindfulness circle for them. And I'm going to just talk about 3 more things in terms of these circles. The children really want some sort of management. They may not, initially, they may seem like they don't. They may want to go chaotic, and they may want to do all sorts of things and like run in one direction and run in the other direction. And I've seen kids yoga classes like this. I've seen mindfulness circles like this, you know, but they really do appreciate, at some level, they do appreciate the keeping order in a room. So there are 3 things that when you're thinking about management, set the rules. Say the rules right before you do a mindfulness circle. At the beginning of a mindfulness circle, you need to establish the rules. And I always have 3 rules. I always have, you have your listening ears on, you have personal space, you're not touching anyone around you, and terms of mat, your mat is your home base. In terms of mindfulness circle, the space around you is your home base. You're not going to someone else's home base. You're staying in your own home base. You're not engaging physically with anyone else. These are the rules of mindfulness. These are the rules of whatever you're doing, yoga, peace class, whatever you're doing. But before you establish some sort of circle, mindfulness circle, or if you're doing a yoga circle, anything like that, you really do have to set the management space for it. And this takes practice. This takes a lot of practice. This takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of knowing the group that you're in. It's going to look different with the older kids and the little kids. The little kids really want to make a game with it. The little ones, kinders, all the way up to third, they want it to be a game. They want to practice it. They want to really please you in like showing you that they can do that. So that's one aspect of it. The older kids, it's going to be more, you may need more of an incentive for them. You may kind of test it out, but they need that structure just as much as the kinders do, okay? So by establishing those rules, by establishing that type of format for your classes, I really guarantee you that they're going to go much more smoothly. I've seen classes where chaos reigns, and you know what? The kids don't like it. They don't feel like it's right. They know, even though they may be the ones that are causing the chaos, they still have something inside of them that's saying, oh, this is just, you know, this is just not how I know a good classroom runs. They can tell a good teacher who knows how to manage as a class versus a teacher who is just, you know, lets chaos be chaos, you know? So it's going to take practice, but if you stand and if you're very grounded in what you do, if you're very just standing your feet and very clear, clarity is key in all of this. You don't need to yell at children. You don't need to raise your voice. It's your own energy that's going to establish your classroom management. And that energy is going to be in your feet, and you're going to be very clear with them and say, look, this is it. These are the rules. And you know, you're going to stay in your own home base. You're not going to touch anyone. And then what you're going to have to do is follow through. So they really want role models to follow through on their actions, right? So if you tell them, okay, well, I'm going to give you 2 or 3 chances, or maybe just 1 chance, establish your own type of process. Honestly, I really haven't, once I've like set the rules out, I really haven't had that many problems in terms of discipline or anything like that. But the thing is that you have to stay on top of it. You have to say, oh, do you remember when I said you have to turn on your listening ears, turn your listening ears on? You have to follow through with what you're saying in your rules. You can't let it slip. You can't let one child do one thing and another child do the same thing and not get the same consequences. They catch on to things like that very quickly. And so they're ultra aware, especially the older kids are ultra aware of the sense of justice. Like that's a 7th and 8th grade developmental thing. They really want to be treated in a certain way where there's this sense of justice. So especially with that age group, you have to be very clear about, if I'm going to give Johnny a consequence for doing this, and I have to give, you know, I have to give Eric the same consequence if he's doing the same thing. So having that awareness of classroom management is key. And I have to say that it's just, the key to it is loving children, doing it in a loving way, and to just practice, spending time with children, practicing with them, also getting to know them. They want to know that you're not only their teacher, but that you also care about them. We talked about that last time too, that you care about what happens to them, that you care about their families, that you connect them on a real way. They don't want to just be part of your class and in this academic mind frame. They want to see the whole picture of who you are. So that will help. If you have that relationship with your students, that will help with the management piece of these mindfulness circles. So, and even when, let's say someone acts out, there's always this great technique of after class, of setting them aside and having this one-on-one with them. Children need that. They need that extra attention sometimes. They need because it's this balance of really having that engagement within class, giving them, talking to them in front of their peers or disciplining them in front of their peers, it has to be, there's an art to it. It has to be done in a very loving and kind way. And if it escalates to a way, it becomes a power struggle, children don't want to engage in a power struggle. They want to know that you already have the power because you're the adult. You know, you are the adult in the situation, so you are, you know, you are standing your ground and you're in your own power. So, and they depend on that. They rely on that. So if it means that in a situation where there's a problem, if you just take them aside after class and have a one-on-one with them, have a heartfelt conversation with them, that could change the rest of the classes with them. So I just really we'll come back to this piece of classroom management because this is what's missing in a lot of mindfulness classes. This is what's missing in a lot of yoga classes. In a lot of classes, this classroom management piece it changes the whole energy of the class, and it's so, so important. So I just want to make a note about that mindfulness circles. And we're going to go straight to the singing bowls. So I'm going to put Tradika aside, candle gazing aside. So if you're wondering why I'm calling it Tradika, that's the Sanskrit name for candle gazing. The name for candle gazing is Tradika. And so here we have the singing bowls. I have 2 of them out right now. Again, they're vibrational instruments. They're tuned to different frequencies. And actually, I don't have the specific frequency these are tuned. I can find out for you. But these are actually tuned to different energetic fields of the body. And so I'm just gonna, when I introduce the singing bowls to the students, again, they're very attracted to the sound and to the vibration. I know some classrooms that use the singing bowls as a way to get their attention. So that's the way that whereas, you know, some people will do a hand signal or some people will do clapping and that gets the attention of the whole group and everything. The singing bowls is like the way to get the attention of the children. It's a very gentle way to get the attention of the children. So instead of saying, everybody listen to me, or, I mean, teachers have all sorts of ways of getting the attention of their students. They use the singing bowls as one of those ways. So my students know when we're doing a unit on, or a month on the singing bowls, they know that I always allow them, 1 or 2 of them, to actually play this instrument at the end of our own practice. Okay, so that's another incentive. I monitor it closely because these bowls are very fragile. They have the ring on the bottom of them. They come this way. You can order them. You can get them online. I got mine online. You can get them from other stores, instrument musical places. Some of them, they come in all sorts of ways. Like some of them are tinted a different color. There's the Tibetan bowls too. There's the chimes. There's all sorts of different sounds that you can use in terms of this. So what I do is I introduce it, and the minute that I get them out, they immediately know. I establish the mindfulness circle. I get them out, and they immediately know, okay, the incentive of being here at the end, I could be one of the ones that can play this. So again, that's a classroom management piece, and it's also an incentive for them. So then what I'll do is I'll set them up around the room. No, actually, I'll set them up with me, 2 or 3 of them. And today I just have these 2. Actually, I just only have 2. So, and then what I do is I put the timer on for 3 to 5 minutes. So first I'll start with 3 minutes. And then So because these instruments are so fragile, I give them a talk about it. Oh, yay, you have yours too. Great, that's the Tibetan bowls, right? The Tibetan bowl run? Yeah, great. So I give them a talk, I prep them, I say, this is really fragile. This can break very easily. We don't touch this unless you are given permission to touch this. And what else? We don't put anything in the bowls. This is a really funny aspect of this. I didn't think that I really had to go there, but you do have to go there. You have to tell them very specifically. Nothing goes inside of the bowls, including the mallet. The mallet doesn't really go, you can play it this way, but it's a lot, the sound is better on the outside of the bowl. Okay, so you want to make those distinctions for them. Also, this ring that goes on the bottom, we never put the bowl down on the ground without the ring. So these are the 3 things that I always tell them before we start. I just give them a whole outline, this whole outline of these 3 things, and just talk extensively about it, just so they know that I'm aware of how fragile this is, and I'm aware how special it is for them to be in our classroom and for them to be part of Mindfulness Circle. So that's practically how I started. And then I put the timer on for 3 minutes and I just start playing it. So I am not like a musician or anything. I have very little training on these bowls, but I do know enough about them to know what not to do. And to kind of, I'm more intuitive, I would have to say, with the bowls. It's the sound. I kind of go with the flow of the sound and what, and the energy of the room or the flow of the room. So a lot of the kids really like to do this high ringing noise. I don't know if you guys can hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys hear it? The first month I was doing this with children, they would love that. They would love that high and the ringing part of it. And then I realized, okay, not everybody loves that. And a lot of them have a reaction to that high, and they're sensitive beings to begin with. So what I would do is I would be right next to them and I would just temper it. I would like come in with my finger and just kind of soften that high pitch. So what you're doing is you're monitoring the sound of it, and you're kind of reading the circle and you're going with the flow of the group. Because definitely at the end of me doing my demonstration, I definitely have, and they want to do their own, they all always want to do that really high pitch thing just to kind of get everybody, like get everybody's senses, the hearing really escalated. So I'm just going to play a little bit of it. And hopefully you guys can hear me. Next time I'm going to use my microphone. I do have a microphone. Do you hear that?
I can hear you. Yep.
Okay. So it's what you'll see is that this really changes the whole energy of a room. And so before and after, there's this effect afterwards. The room gets very calm and it changes. It just really is, and it's just a testament to music. Music really does give us so much. There's just, music is such a gift for us. So then I would do that for like 3 to 5 minutes, or I would go 3 minutes, I would pause and check in with everyone, and then go for another 3 minutes, and maybe do it 2 or 3 times, depending on if they're really receiving it, and if they can, and if they've settled down really, and they're concentrating on it. So what they're doing is they're just listening. They're just, you're saying, okay, we're just gonna listen to this music now, this is part of mindfulness, and they're just listening and taking in the music. What else? So then how I ended is I have them come, volunteers, and everyone really volunteers for this type of thing. Everybody really wants to play these instruments. And so then I would let 2 or 3 of them play and then keep on. This is something you can do weekly, you can do it monthly. This is something that the children really look forward to. They really are engaged by it. And if you have the depend ones, like what you have, Paula, if you have 2 or 3 of them, you can actually, you can actually have more people playing them, or you can play together. You can have yourself as playing, and then you can have a helper that's playing right next to you, But again, setting up the format for that, setting up the procedure for how that's going to look like. Okay, any questions about that? Oh, okay, so let's move on. Let's go to the quiet, soothing music. So I'm going to move. And I gave you a link. And I'm going to share with you my screen. Here you go. This one is one of my favorite online quiet, soothing music. And we're just going to listen to just 30 seconds of this one. Okay, so if you look at the screen, there's so many options here. You have a relaxing piano music, beautiful piano music, 10 hours of relaxing music, tranquility music for self-healing, and it goes on and on and on and on. So you really, unless you want to, you really don't need to purchase any kind of soothing music. What I would do is I would kind of listen to a few of them and see which ones you resonate with. And this is also good for, I use this in so many circumstances. Like there's so many circumstances you can use this music. You can use it, and the actual position that you have the children in during this time, you can have them laying down on a mat. You can have them in a chair with their heads down on the tables. You can have them even standing, if they're standing and they're just taking a moment in between activities or in between like a very physical activity. There's so many ways you can use this music. What I did most often is I used this relaxing piano music, and that was our mindfulness activity, and they just lay down on the floor on the mats, and they absolutely love that. We did that after almost every day after lunch, and so it's just something that they look forward to. And again, this is all engaging for them. It's all something that, like the singing bowls, the candle flame in front of the candle gazing, the soothing music, this is all something that they like engage them and bring them in through the senses. So your soothing music, whatever is soothing music for you, then can be your practice. So that's where the homework is. It's the soothing music for a week. And just taking, maybe it's just a minute, maybe it's just 2 minutes that you start your day with, and you wake up and you just listen to soothing music, and you just clear your mind for 2 minutes. Maybe it's 5 minutes. Maybe you do that in the beginning. Maybe you do it at the end of the day. But I'm giving you the flexibility to just really nurture yourself with it. All of these mindfulness activities, they're really opportunities for you to take care of yourself and just to take your own self-care to another level. Ultimately, what we're teaching these children is that self-care matters, that being able to take a couple minutes and meditate, being able to take a couple minutes and listen to quiet music and use that as your meditation, it really does make a difference in your day-to-day being, in your day-to-day. When you go out and do the external stuff that you need to do, that those habits that you have, that internal space, is just as important. So that's really what we're teaching them. And the personal connection is, I really want you to think about what role does music play in your life? Like, how can you make this a personal connection, and how can you just reflect upon that and meditate on that? Yeah. Okay, great. So week 2, we're here.
Done.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions or anything you want to add?
I will say I did learn how to pull up the side view, so I got the links and the.
Okay, great.
But I didn't get anything from last week. This is my first time using Zoom, so I'm learning.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make sure that you get everything that I've sent out.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, great.
Great.
Okay, well, happy International Peace Day.
And so are we
Tuesday.
Are we doing it Tuesday?
Tuesday?
Or are we waiting to hear from you?
Yeah,
okay.
No, Tuesday from 7 to 9, and I'll send out an email too.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.